Good morning, everyone. Let's get into it. So, in this video of mine, I'm going to talk to you about your choice in programming language. And this goes doubly if this is your first programming language that you're picking. And why it is important, why the choice of your programming language actually does matter. And maybe I'll throw a few considerations in there as well as to what I think is important to remember when you're picking a programming language. So let's get into it. First and foremost, if you are starting out for the very first time and you've never programmed before and you're asking yourself, hey, what's going to be my first programming language? Now, the reason why this decision is very important for you is that you will realize, or rather you most likely don't know, that not all programming languages can do everything that you would want to do, because different programming languages were created for different reasons, and that of course puts you in a very awkward position. How could you possibly know which one to pick? And some of them do the same thing as other programming languages do, and then there are all these types of people out on the interwebs who's gonna tell you that you should use that one because that one's better than that one, or this one should be a better fit because he or she has some experience with it, yada 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 yada. And the thing is that when it all comes down to it, there is one fundamental thing that is true. If a programming language was designed to do a given thing, in other words, it can actually do the thing that you're looking for, and there's more than one of them who are doing the same thing, that means that they can all do what you're looking for. But that's not a satisfying answer, now is it? And it's actually funny enough, when I first started, the most common thing people told me, I kept hearing it over and over and over. Like, I could not for the life of me find anybody who could give me a concrete answer. You know, which one should I pick? Which programming language should I go with if I want to do games development? And everybody told me everything from, oh yeah, it's you can go with Java, C#, C++. You can do it in you could do it in JavaScript. Some people even threw in there. And all these things are true to a point, but what I was looking for was to make the sort of games that, you know, I want that works the same way as something you would download from Steam or, you know, install on your computer and so forth. And that's a specification to my requirement. In other words, what I'm trying to tell you is that when you're asking the question, which programming language should I pick, you need to consider what it is that you want to be able to do. If what you want to do is web-based programming, then that's going to give you like the person that you're asking about which programming language to pick, that's going to give them a context. Because if you're asking a professional developer which language they should go with, most of them are going to be engineers about it, and they're going to consider all the factors and all the parameters, and they're not going to give you a straight answer, because it's very difficult for them to give you good advice when you're asking something as big as that. It's very similar to asking a car salesman, what car should I buy? It's such a broad question. Like, what are your needs? Are you a family person? Are you single? Like, do you work out a lot? Do you need like an environmental vehicle? Like, there's all kinds of things that are factored in. So that's the first thing. You need to ask yourself what you want to do with the programming language. That's number one. The second thing is that you need, when it comes to picking a programming language, and why this matters, is because it sets the tone for what you're going to learn going forward. If you are, let's say, I'll give you a good example. I have a colleague who is a whiz kid with computer science. He's extremely good at it, and he spends almost all his time working with mathematical formulas, and he does a lot of statistical analytics and so forth. And his choice of programming language is R, which is a really good choice for this. Same thing with people who are using MATLAB, or maybe you're using Python for some stuff as well. And the thing is that these are the sort of language, not Python necessarily, I'm just going to put that in there so nobody comes here on my comment sections and starts asking me why I'm saying that Python is only for computer science, because it's not. Anywho, that choice that he made has set the tone for what he wants to do. He cannot today sit down and do web development because he has not learned a programming language that is optimized for web development. He doesn't have the skill set. I mean, he's open about that because his needs is not to learn web development. He's interested in computer science. That's what he wants to do. He wants to crunch numbers. So that language is perfect for him. It's not going to help him in web or games development, but it's going to be absolutely perfect for him for the thing he wants to do. And that's why it's so important to pick the right language. If you are asking somebody, hey, I want to learn, I don't know, functional programming, or if you were to ask such a question and they tell you that you should learn Haskell, then you should know that Haskell is a really good choice for functional programming if you want to do specifically functional programming, but it's absolutely horrible for you to learn regular, like just boilerplate, getting the basics. If somebody would just tell me that they gave advice to a beginner that, and said that Haskell should be their first choice, I would very much question that decision, because that's going to learn that because it's so enormously different from any other programming language. It's very, very different. It's a completely different way of writing things. It's not bad. It's really great. I mean, Haskell is amazing, but you should know that that is going to set the tone for what they are going to be able to do in the future. Now, is this the most important thing in the world? No, it is not. But I think it should be factored in when you're making, your first programming language decision and so forth. I think it should always be factored in, because the thing is that some people will tell you that, any good engineer can use any language. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what language you are using. That is absolutely bullshit. It is such bullshit. If you are the sort of person who's saying that, then let's at least you and I agree that if it didn't matter which thing you picked for, like if there's if everybody should be able to use everything in the programming world, let's apply that to anything, then it shouldn't matter which race car a race driver drives, or what like shoes a football player uses. I can absolutely agree that when you get to a certain level of professionalism and you know enough about programming, you can probably get stuff done in all languages, but that doesn't mean that you can do it well. If you don't believe me, I want you to know that for the majority of my career so far, I've been hired to clean up the front-end mess that so-called full stack developers have introduced into a code base. Now, I'm not saying I'm better at it than they are, but I'm saying that if it was so easy to just write the same type of quality code in every programming language, then we wouldn't have so many messy front-end projects now, would we? Anywho, if we put it up one level and we talk about considerations when you're not necessarily making your first programming language choice, but you're rather considering things about, okay, what are you going to build, like something more professional, then the question becomes much broader and actually very, very complicated, because the thing is that even though some languages are optimized for solving very specific problems in a very nice way, that doesn't mean that they are necessarily the right choice for you, because you have to consider that the fact that they are optimized for something, that value needs to outweigh potential consequences to it. My favorite one is, like, I had a discussion the other day about functional programming. I was saying that, it's getting to be really trendy to do functional. However, I argue that I think, some people say, oh yeah, Haskell's going to come in and become a mainstream thing, and, all that stuff. And I say, I don't think so. I don't think so, because there are enough other very nice-ish functional, because the assumption is that functional programming will get to a point where the value of doing functional programming is so high that you are considering it as a factor when you're making a tech decision on behalf of your company. That's very rarely the case. I mean, people don't go with Java because it's just because it's object oriented. It's a programming paradigm that helps with the programming process. It absolutely has value, but it's not as valuable as stability, you know, the brand of Java and like the legacy and all that. There are so many other things that are generally more important than something like that. So take C++ and versus Go, for example, where C++ hands down it's absolutely the like lowest level language, you know, in modern time, and it's optimized for being a system level language. And even though it's extremely powerful and can do anything that Go can and probably a little bit more, it doesn't really factor in so much to people who are going to system level languages today, because Go is a nicer development experience. And even though that may sound like a silly thing, it's actually something that makes a big difference. So there are many, many more things to consider when it comes to picking a programming language that you should be aware of. And at the end of the day, I think that the two most important things to keep in mind is to ask yourself, okay, what do you want to do? Like, what's the thing that you're going to achieve? And the second thing is, how productive can I get stuff done with this? Is this going to be the right choice for me to get where I want to be as quickly as possible? Because for the most part, a lot of the languages will be able to do the same thing. So it boils down to figuring a matter of preference. Which one of them is going to help you get to where you want to go the fastest?